All right, welcome back to Texas Live and Local. You know what time it is. It's time to track the tropics. We've been fortunate so far for this hurricane season, at least for the Atlantic basin. We haven't had anything of a tropical nature to deal with in our area. We had one disturbance that we were monitoring off of the Florida and Georgia coast. There was about a 10% shot it could turn into something tropical, maybe a depression, but it didn't happen. It did bring some rain to the Carolinas, but so far, so good. But keep in mind, we've got a long way to go before we get to the end of this hurricane season. So make sure that you're staying alert. Make sure you're preparing your emergency supply kit because you know we are in a pretty vulnerable area living in and around Houston. So you've got to be ready to go. So prepare now while it's quiet. As far as the tropics, of course, the Atlantic basin remains quiet, but the Eastern Pacific remains super busy. We've got a couple of systems that we're still tracking. We're almost a month into the Eastern Pacific hurricane season. Of course, it did begin on May 15th and we're almost to June 15th. So we had our first hurricane form, Barbara, that is now weakened to a tropical storm, and that one is kind of quickly falling apart. And we have tropical storm Cosme and another potential development area that is being monitored. So let's go to our satellite, our tropical satellite. You can see the tropical storms that we have here. Barbara closer to that western Mexican coast, and then we've got Cosme farther out into the Pacific. Here's Cabo San Lucas here, so neither one of these systems are going to roll over Cabo. So if you're about to enjoy some vacay time around Cabo, you won't have to worry about either of these tropical systems. They're actually venturing into much cooler water. So guess what that does to tropical systems? It usually causes them to fall apart and weaken very quickly. So even though we had Hurricane Barbara over the last 24 hours, it's already down from 75 mile per hour winds to 40 mile per hour winds. And notice by 1 a.m. Wednesday, it's just a remnant low, 30 mile per hour winds, and then it kind of falls apart completely after that before it reaches Cabo. So good news there for any vacation plans that you may have there in your near future. All right, let's track Tropical Storm Cosme. It is out in the Eastern Pacific as well, a little bit farther to the west of Barbara, but it also is encountering some drier air, some cooler water, so it is in the process of weakening as well. Yesterday it was up to 70 miles per hour, now down to 50 mile per hour winds. Movement to the north-northwest, creeping at 3 miles per hour, and it is forecast to become a tropical depression by Wednesday, and then a remnant low as we go into Thursday, and then we can say goodbye to Cosme. So Barbara and Cosme will likely be out of here over the next 1 to 2 days. Once we get rid of those, will things finally start to calm down in the Eastern Pacific? Well, the answer is no. We're already watching the next potential development area in the East Pacific. This is just off of the southwestern Mexican coast, very near Acapulco. And now we've gone from a low to a medium to now a high chance for development. In fact, an 80% shot that this area will basically hold our next tropical system, and that would be in the Eastern Pacific as well. So things are booming for the East Pacific, but fortunately for the Gulf, for the Caribbean, for the Atlantic, no tropical activity expected at least over the next week. So certainly some good news for us. We've been dealing with enough with just general showers and storms. We certainly don't need anything of a tropical nature, so we won't have to worry about it for at least another week. Fox weather model showing just some general showers and storms as we go through the next 2 to 3 days up towards Cuba, Haiti, Dominican Republic, maybe a few showers near Jamaica and over towards Cancun. Not really showing a lot of rain, but a brief afternoon, evening shower, typical for this time of the year, but nothing too crazy showing up at this point. You can see down around Central America and farther south for northern parts of South America, there will be a slightly better shot for some showers and storms, but nothing tropical expected to develop. We've still got quite a bit of Saharan dust swirling out there in the Atlantic, and that will continue to push from east to west. Not really seeing a ton of that dust pushing into the Houston area. We'll get a little bit of it, but I don't think it's going to be as thick as what we had late last week and over the weekend. So that tropical development will actually be hindered by a lot of that Saharan dust out there in the Atlantic and parts of the Caribbean. So I think that will help to limit things as far as hurricanes, tropical storms developing near us. But of course, once that dust starts to kind of settle down over the next few weeks, that's when we'll likely start to see a slightly better shot. Wave heights, maybe if you're going to be out on a cruise across parts of the Gulf, maybe over into parts of the Western Atlantic, it looks like wave heights will be tolerable. Nothing that will maybe having you getting dizzy out there on the cruise ship because it's bouncing back and forth, but 2 to 4 foot waves. So that's definitely manageable, nothing too crazy. So we're looking at 3 foot waves by Thursday for Cancun, over towards the Bahamas, waves around 3 feet as we go into the weekend, maybe up to 4 feet. But like I said, nothing that is not manageable. So overall, cruise weather looking fairly nice. Storm names for this year. Still, we have not even used one. Wouldn't that be something if we went throughout the entire hurricane season and we didn't have to use any of these names? But that is not what the forecasts are calling for. We're calling for an above average season. So we might be a little slow getting things started, but eventually I think several of these names will be used, starting with Andrea, then Barry, Chantal, Dexter, Aaron, and then Fernan. So we've got to remain vigilant because this is just the start. So typically in June, we don't have very much development in the tropics. This is basically where we look for a potential hurricane developing for the month of June. So the Eastern Gulf tends to be the spot to watch for a rare June hurricane, but right now, nothing at all popping up out there. So thankfully things are quiet, but of course we're keeping a close eye on these typical hot spots that we would generally have for the month of June. All right, as far as formation zones for the month of July for hurricanes, notice it kind of starts to expand as we go into July. We got a better shot for maybe a hurricane developing across the western part of the Caribbean. We've got a better shot for a hurricane potentially developing right along that Texas Gulf Coast. And we have a better shot for hurricanes developing in the western portion of the Atlantic. So remember last July, that's when Beryl hit us back on July 8th. So it certainly can happen in July. So that's why I've been saying you need to go ahead and prepare now because you never know. You don't want to be scrambling at the last minute trying to get supplies to board up your windows or getting water, non-perishable food, because at the last minute, everybody's trying to do that and a lot of supplies run out quickly. So here's some things you can be getting together now before we go under that risk for tropical activity. Of course, your batteries, your food, your pet supplies, phone charger, important to have, your water, personal documents, make sure they're protected from flooding, and of course any medications that you may have. You need to definitely make sure you have those, and extra house and car keys, first aid kit, and of course your sanitation items. Those are important as well. All right, before I leave you, let's get a preview of some cruise weather. Of course, it is cruise season. A lot of you ready to take a break from it all and just get away out there on the water, maybe in a tropical paradise. If you're heading to San Juan, Puerto Rico, 20% shot for rain for this weekend. Weather looks fantastic. We can deal with a shower or two. We just don't want a big hurricane sitting on top of Puerto Rico, but it looks pretty nice. Temps in the upper 80s, a bit of a breeze, wind out of the east around 10 to 20 miles per hour, but not too much to complain about. Finally, looking at Cabo. This is close to perfect. If you like to get out, maybe work on your tan, don't forget the sunscreen. Temps near 80. We've got those temperatures that will be feeling great. Those two tropical systems, Cosme and Barbara, will stay south of Cabo. So we're talking about nothing but sunshine, highs around 79 to 80 degrees. Doesn't get much better than that. So if you're lucky enough to vacation in Puerto Rico or Cabo for this weekend, enjoy yourselves. It looks like cruise weather will be fantastic. That will do it for your tropical update for today.